Quantitative literacy, lesson 2.6. So here we're measuring population change. Worksheet on this, we have some data that we're going to play around with. So South Atlantic states, mountain states, 2010 population census, 2000 population census. We want to be able to calculate the absolute change for each of these states and the percent or relative change for each of these states. So let's do that. You need to take a read through our objectives and the problem situation with an example. I'm going to jump right into playing with the states. Later in the worksheet, we have to look at a map about 2010 change in representation due to population changes throughout the US. For now, we need to do some calculation. So you can't usually copy and paste from a PDF type document into a spreadsheet. It doesn't usually go well. So if I try to do that here, use spreadsheets. So again, Control C is what I'm using to copy. And in my spreadsheet, Control V to paste. Doesn't come in very well. So most spreadsheets, that's going to be the case. So I added another page with the tables. And so here I can start at the word state and highlight over and down and copy that, Control C, here Control V, and that copy is a little bit better. Got an extra row at the top, but that's no big deal. So I'm just going to pretty this up a little bit. Delete that extra row, and let's say we're going to wrap these titles. So highlight, format, text wrapping, wrap. That's prettier. And then column A needs to be a little wider. We can double click on the boundary between column A and B at the top, and it picks just the right width there. All right, so that's lovely. We're going to have a summary down here later. So I'm going to highlight row 11 through column E, and I want to pretty that up. Let's give it a nice, say, light blue for South Atlantic, and we'll make it bold. We'll again fix that width. All right, so now calculations, now that it's prettied up. Absolute change is just the new value minus the old value. So in that cell, I type equals, click on the new value, minus old value, enter. And population or percent change is also known as relative change. Well, that would just be equal to the amount of change divided by the original amount. So 2000 versus 2010, 2000 is the original amount there. That gives me the percent change as a decimal. So I'm going to click back on it and make that a percent. And that would be 2 decimal places. Usually I like 1 decimal place, so 15.0% change. Now that that's formatted pretty, I can highlight the 2 of those, let go of the mouse, point back to that bottom right corner to get that autofill button, and fill it down. As far as doing the South Atlantic region, I want to add up all of those state populations to get the total South Atlantic region. So to do that, I use the functions option, and I want to sum. And then if that box that describes what you're doing is blocking you, you can close that and then just highlight the numbers you want to sum, enter. Repeat that over here. Click on the cell you want the sum in, choose sum, highlight to get the total, and then enter. These are like the formulas above. I want to do a subtraction. New population minus old population is the absolute change. So the South Atlantic states gained 8 million people in 10 years. And then over here, I want to see what is that as a percentage. So I want to take the gain and divide, slash is divide, by the original amount, which is the earlier one, 2000. And format that as a percentage to 1 decimal place. Okay, so that's nice and pretty. We did a good job. we're going to add another sheet to this. So two things I want to do is I want to not have it untitled. So this is less than 2.6. If you want, you can give it a better title. Measuring change. And then since I'm going to add another tab, I want to give them better tab names than sheet 1 and sheet 2. So this one is going to be South Atlantic. And this one in a moment is going to be Mountain. That was the other table I want. So back to my data. So I also want to do the same thing with the mountain states, just to practice making a nice spreadsheet. Again, it's not going to work well if I try to copy from the PDF file, so I have to switch over to where I have a more copyable view. Now, if you just have a PDF file and you don't have another way to access the data, you're going to have to retype it, which is unfortunate. But here I happen to have made that table for you. So starting with the word state, highlight down. And you don't want to highlight too much because that could mess stuff up. So I just want to go to inside that last box. Control C to copy. And then pick a place to put it. Control V to paste. And pretty similar, I need this to be a little wider. And I want to wrap those columns. So highlight, format, text wrapping, switch from overflow to wrap. That's pretty. And then let's make this bottom mountain states. I think they should be green today and bold. All right, how do we do absolute change? Exactly, that is new minus old. And remember, to do a formula, we always type equals first. So equals new minus old. Percent change is always the amount of change, so equals the amount of change divided by the original amount. So 2010 versus 2000, I would say 2000 should be the original amount. Click back on it and say I want a percentage and just 1 decimal place. If you like 2 decimal places, just leave it, that's cool. If you want 3 decimal places, it's up to you. It depends on the problem we're doing. This one, 1 decimal place is good. And then I can highlight those two, let go, click, point back to that bottom right corner so you get that plus, fill down, and I'm going to fill down one more time. Now it says 0 and division by 0, but I'm about to fill those in with the sum button. So next I want to sum those mountain states. And basically this is the same kind of formula, so I can just fill that to the right. So now everything comes out nice, except those need a prettier color. Lost that one, I filled it down. There we go, now they match. All right, so some other things. Let's go back to the South Atlantic for a minute. Suppose I wanted to find out, well, which state had the biggest absolute change? And I can just scan this list of numbers and say, hey, it looks like Florida had the biggest absolute change. Now, if there were more than, say, 9 numbers to look at, that would be hard to do. Like if there were 100 or 200, it'd be very hard for me to visually scan that list and pick the largest one. So there's a couple ways the spreadsheet can do that for us. Method number 1, if you point to the column heading, not the name, but the column D, and then the arrow, one of the options, if you scroll down, is to sort the sheet by that column. Now, if you wanted the smallest number on top, you would choose sort sheet A to Z. If you wanted the largest, sort sheet Z to A. Shit, how do I sound? Okay, excuse my language. So I want to try Z to A. So that should put the biggest number on top. Oh, but then it messed up my formula for South Atlantic region. So that's a problem. However, I wasn't really concerned about that. I wanted to know that Florida had the most, then Georgia, then South Carolina. But so I got that information out of it, but I'm kind of bummed that this got messed up. I'm going to undo that and try a different way. So again, the quick way to do it, which can sometimes mess up other parts of the spreadsheet, is go to the column you're interested in sorting by, click the arrow, and then find where it says sort and figure out whether you want an ascending sort, smallest to largest, or a descending sort, largest to smallest. Okay. So other way to do it is highlight just the stuff you want to sort. Now, usually when I do that, I highlight the headings so I know which column is which. Otherwise, they're just called column A, B, C, D, and E, and I have to remember which is which. Okay, so I'm ignoring the South Atlantic region, so I'm just going from West Virginia on up. Okay. So then I go to data instead, and under data, I could do sort range, but it's only letting me use column A, and I could do sort sheet. So sort sheet would be like what we did before, but only on column A. Sort range would ignore the South Atlantic region and just sort the stuff I highlighted. That's still not good enough. So we're going to go to the sort range special option here. So just sort range. And then I'm going to say, yeah, I did highlight a header row because now I can sort by state or 2010 population, 2000 absolute percent. So I'm going to say, I want absolute this time. And then do you want an ascending sort or a descending? I want descending, which means put the biggest stuff on top. Sort. Now it just looks at the stuff I highlighted and rearranges. Okay, so now I can see Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and it left South Atlantic. Sum total down here alone. I'm going to repeat that again. So suppose instead I wanted to sort by percent change. So I just highlight the region of stuff I want to sort, skip stuff I don't want to sort, and then I go to data, sort range, indicate whether you highlighted your header row or not. And the header row is nice because then it gives you nice options. Otherwise, you have to remember, which column did I want to sort from? Oh, I forgot. I gotta go back and look. Oh yeah, column D. That's a pain in the butt. So make sure you highlight your headers and your data. Data, sort range, header row. Pick what you want to sort by. This time I want percent change, and I want the biggest change on top. Just start with Z. Sort. And this time it tells me that North Carolina had the biggest, followed by Georgia, followed by Florida. Okay, so sorting and putting information formulas, all important spreadsheet skills. So I'm going to answer one more question and then end this and let you play around with your assignment. So you're asked some questions about the data. And some of these questions you can just write C spreadsheet. Others you have to actually do some work. Here you're going to write down your states. I want to check out Michigan. So Michigan is neither a mountain state nor a South Atlantic state. Say it's a Midwest state. From 2000 to 2010, Michigan's population actually dropped. So their population went to 9,800,000 from 9,900,000. So I'm going to put that in my spreadsheet and do a calculation. Back to my spreadsheet. I'm going to add a new tab. Move it over. And this tab is just Michigan. And like before, I want these headings, so I'm just going to grab those, copy, Control-C, paste, Control-V. Michigan in here, and its population in 2010 dropped to 9,833,640. See what else? It was at in 2000, 9,938,444 people. And it'd be nice if there were commas in there. So I'm going to highlight them and go to the 1, 2, 3 more formats option and say, give me a number, but I don't need decimal places. That's kind of irritating. So I'm just going to drop those 2 decimal places. And now I can see that I mistyped this number here. So what should that be? That should be 9,938. Oh, I missed a 4. And now it looks right. Okay, good. Comments are helpful. Absolute change. Absolute change is the new value minus the old value. So here we can see we have a negative number, which means we have a drop in population. Percent change is always the absolute change divided by what you consider the original amount. Well, we went from the year 2000 to 2010, so I would say 2000's population is the original amount. And then make that a pretty percent. So click back on it, percent, and you choose how many decimal places you want. I'm going to leave 2 this time. So I can see Michigan's population dropped by about 1% in that time span. You can have negative populations, population changes. Populations go up and down. All right, let's take a look at one more question, and then you can go play with this on your own. You get to check out the map. And I want to go down here to discuss this. In 2011, the U.S. Congress had a major debate over cutting federal budget in mid-year. The goal was to reduce the national debt, which was $14 trillion. So one group wanted to reduce by $100 billion. Okay, so that sounds like a lot of money. We want to know what is this as a relative change. So relative means percent change. So I want to compare 100 billion change, so that's my absolute change, to a $14 trillion base amount. So I need a spreadsheet for this. So new tab. And this is, again, what should we title this? Budget cuts. Okay, so let's see, we need column 4, budget, and then we have change in the budget, so this is our absolute change, and another one for relative change. So don't change, Gary. Okay. So the budget amount was 14 trillion. So let's see, 14. That's 1,000. Billion. Trillion. And let's put some comments in there to make sure we got it right. So that would be the more formats number. Wider, get rid of those decimal points. All right, so let's see. Ones, thousands, millions, billions, trillions. Okay, so that's the budgeted amount. The first absolute change was, what was it? 100 million. 100 billion. So 1, 2, 3, that's thousands, millions, billions. Make sure we got that right. Drop some decimals. 1,000, million, billion. Okay, so the relative change there is just going to be the absolute divided by the original of the budget and make that a percentage. So I get 0.7%. All right, so now let's think about this. Suppose you're somebody who wants a big change. Which are you going to be more moved by? Saying, hey, let's drop $100 billion out of the budget. Or do you want me to say, hey, let's just reduce the budget by 0.7%, right? So in this case, the relative change, that doesn't sound like much. But the absolute change, that sounds like an awful lot. So if I was trying to convince you that we need a big change and you were in the same boat, you would appreciate the 100 billion. Now, suppose you were in the camp that you don't want a big change. Then when I was talking to you, I would say, hey, we're only going to change the budget by 0.7%. And you're like, that's nothing. Let's do it. So each of these numbers is directly related to what's happening. They just give us a slightly different perspective on the issue. All right, that's it for now. Have fun working on this. Oops, I gave it the wrong title. This is lesson 2.6, measuring population change. Have fun, do good math. See you later.